Alright, so welcome back to Dell of Merchants Collection. So for this video, we're going to be talking about character cards. Now, there are three different colors of character cards. There's green, there's yellow, and there's red. Now, green is for beginners, okay? And they're mostly really easy to play with. Yellow is for intermediate, and red is for expert. Now, I only know how to play, thus far, with the green character cards. So we're only going to talk about the green character cards, which means that there are no specialty cards that work with the green character cards. So we will not be going over any specialty cards at this time. In fact, it might still be a while before we go over any of those, because it might still be a while before I'm ready to talk about how the intermediate cards, let alone how the expert cards work either. But I have memorized and know how to use these cards very well. Now, I also have done all the other merchants as well. So in the next few videos after this, we're also going to be talking about them, the last four merchants that I haven't talked about yet. And also, we're also going to talk about how the trap cards work as well. We'll actually probably do the trap cards before we get to the obviously the merchants themselves. So, let's start by talking about these character cards. Now, I'll probably botch up a lot of their names, so just use my own pronunciation of how I think they should be pronounced. This one is Narochi, the Hairy Frog Salvager. And he has a special ability. So if this is one of the cards you get as a special ability, and I should probably also talk about how you would get this. So as the setup, what you're going to do is you're going to basically deal out two of these character cards to players. And then each player is going to choose one of the two to keep, which they'll have for the entire game, and the other one will get discarded and won't get used, okay? Now, since they come in three colors, you can decide if you're playing with all three colors, or if you are, going to start with just the green ones, or if you're going to add some yellow ones or red ones in, or whatever. But that's what's going to happen, okay? That's the setup. Okay, so this ability here with this hairy frog is after you build a stack. So after building a stack, you may search your discard pile for a card and place it into your hand. I really like this one a lot. It's really cool. After you build a stack, you'll get to search your discard pile for a card and place it in your hand. That's assuming, of course, you have a hand. If you have any cards in your hand, this will become in handy. And that means every time you build a stack, you're going to get to do this ability 7 times in the course of the game. That's a cool ability, especially if you have a really good card sitting in your discard pile and you'd like to play with it sooner rather than later. That is definitely cool. And of course, you could use that to your advantage to maybe try to build up your merchant stall even faster, obviously. So obviously, I like this one, the Hairy Frog Salvager, quite a bit. It's definitely one of my favorites, at least in the green section anyways. Alright, so here we have Yuan and Yane, the Mandarin duck couple. This ability is when 2 or more cards would be placed on your discard pile at the same time, you may place one of them on top of your deck. Now, there are cards that make you discard your opponent's cards or discard your cards one at a time. If it says one at a time, this ability does not work for that, okay? But, like, for instance, if you were to purchase a card from the market and you used more than one card, or should I say 2 or more cards to do so, they're going to go to your discard pile at the same time, and then you would get to activate this ability, getting to place one of them back on top of your deck. That is a very useful ability. That, in some cases, might even be more useful than the Hairy Frog Salvager, and this is an ability you might get to use quite a bit through the course of the game. Alright, the next one is super easy. Here we have Satchkoir, the Scarlet Macaw, Elite Broker. Your hand size is increased by 1. So if you have this character card, you're the player that has a hand size of 6 for the remainder of the game. Other players, they'll have a hand size of 5, but if you have this guy, you're going to have a hand size of 6 for the rest of the game. You won't have to which is really awesome, I think. That's really cool because even though technically you could play the game with the Scarlet Macaws and get that one particular card that would allow you to increase your hand size by 1, it was a passive ability that would only be working if you kept it in your hand. This isn't going to be in your hand, and you're going to have this ability throughout the course of the game. So that's really cool. So this is 10 times better than that passive ability that the Scarlet Macaws had. A whole lot better. And besides, the fact that you're the only player that's going to have this ability is awesome. So this is definitely another awesome one to have. Okay. So here we have Hicko, the Tanuki Underdog. After building a stack, check which opponent has the most stacks. If they have at least as many as you have, your hand size is increased by 3 until the end of that turn. So, okay, so should I explain this? Yes, I should. So you're going to search, obviously, which opponent has the most stacks. And if they have at least as many as you, you'll get to increase your hand size, which means if you are the player who has the most stacks, then obviously you're not going to get to increase your hand size because an opponent has to have the same amount as you, and if you have one more stack than everybody else, then that means this ability won't work. But if you have if they have at least as many, so if you have an opponent who has more stacks than you, for instance, they have 5 and you have 3, well, you're going to get to activate this ability. If you have 5 and they have 5, same thing. You're going to get to activate this ability. But if, for instance, you have 6 and they have 5, you won't get to activate this ability. But basically, that's really cool. I like that one a lot, too. That could come in handy. And then, of course, you're going to get to draw 3 extra cards for your next turn, probably, which is awesome. I like that. It's a one-time thing, but it could happen every time you build a stack. It could happen. As long as you are sort of the underdog of the game, which kind of makes sense, thematically, too. It's an underdog, right? So if you're running behind, then you're technically the underdog anyways, so this is very thematic, too, in that sense. Really cool one to play with. Alright, this one's really cool. Tehulen, the Desert Monitor Archivist. Discard any number of cards from your hand. And you'll notice this has a green one, and it's called File. It tells you how many times you can play it on your turn, and it says your turn. So that means that you can do this anytime during your turn. Meaning, after you buy a card, for instance, from the market, or after you build a stack, in your stall, your merchant stall, you can discard any number of cards from your hand, which is awesome. Sometimes you have some cards in your hand you weren't able to use, and you'd like to get rid of them, so you can draw more cards into your hand for your next turn, possibly better cards. And so this is definitely going to come in handy on occasion, for sure. So this one I like a lot as well. That's really cool. Okay, the next one is Kahania, the Tuatara Banker. And you're going to need gold if gold is somehow not in the game, you're going to get gold, and only you, if you have this particular character card, is going to have access to the gold, okay? This ability is interest, okay? You can use it once on your turn, and it's going to be played at the start of your turn. You're going to get to take 1 gold coin from the bank, which is awesome. Every turn, you're going to get to do this once every turn. So you're going to stack up some gold if you don't use your gold a lot, and then use it for something big later. That's going to be awesome. It can definitely come in handy. This is definitely an awesome one to get if you can get this one. I like this one a lot. Okay? But that's only at the start of your turn. You'll always do it at the start of your turn. Okay. Now, those last two all had these green abilities, the amount of times you can play them on your turn, etc., etc. And so the rest of these we haven't gone over, will also have this green thing here that you'll be doing as part of an actual action. So here we have Amel, the Red Squirrel Hoarder. This is the only character card in the green that technically has a special setup for this particular player who gets this. If you're the player that decides to take this card, your setup is you're going to shuffle 5 additional junk cards into your deck. Now you're probably thinking, why do I want to do that? That sounds like a bad idea to me. I don't want more junk cards. Well, the reason why you're getting more junk cards is because it's going to give you access to this awesome ability which you can use on your action phase. And you can do this once per turn on your action phase. And it's called Rummage. You can spend an X amount, meaning 1 to 3, because in these parentheses here we have 1 to 3. So you can spend 1 to 3 on purchase, basically, to draw and that exact amount of cards from your deck and place them into your hand. So if you spend 3, you're going to get to draw 3 cards from your deck and place them into your hand. So maybe you have some junk cards in your hand you don't want. You can basically spend the 3 junk cards to draw 3 more cards from your hand, possibly getting some better cards. So this will definitely come in handy. And so it sort of has these extra 5 additional cards, possibly to help you do this more often, so that way you have more junk cards in your hand, but also that's also to help you, obviously not give you a huge advantage over your other opponents, because they won't have this awesome ability, just you. So it sort of evens out a little bit by letting you have that 5 additional junk cards into your deck. And there are some ways of getting rid of junk cards too, so it's not a huge disadvantage. If anything, it should still technically be an advantage. Okay, so that's Amel. Okay. This one's an interesting one. This one is Jira, the Emperor Penguin Archaeologist. His ability is called Discover. He can use it once, and obviously during your action phase. Spend 3 to draw a card from your deck or the market deck to place it into your hand. If you draw from the market deck, your action phase ends. So on your turn, once per turn, you can do this. You can spend 3, either coins if you have them, or just 3 in general. 3 junk cards or something costing 3. And if you have nothing else but something costing 4 or 5 or something like that, you can still do that too if you want to, but only if you don't have any other option, of course. But, you can spend 3 to draw a card from your deck. So maybe you have some junk cards you want to get rid of, and you want to have a better chance of getting a better card from your deck. That could come in handy. But if you ask me, I think getting a card from the market deck every turn is a really cool thing to do. But maybe not necessarily every time. Who knows? But it might be worth doing sometimes for sure. Because the thing is, once you do that, then your action phase ends, which means you can't obviously do any more action cards, technique cards, which means you can't obviously build a stack in your merchant stall, and that means you can't buy a card from the marketplace either. So that's basically going to end your turn if you decide to get a card from your market deck. Still, that's a pretty cool ability to be able to do that. Maybe perhaps once in a while when there's nothing sitting in the marketplace you want, maybe taking this advantage of this ability might be beneficial. Maybe you'll get a better card. Who knows? Because you never know. So that's how you play with that one. Okay, so the next few are all going to be working with the various dice. In fact, all of the dice, okay? The last 2 will not work with the dice. So we have 4 cards here that work with dice. Okay, so the first one here is Bemir, the Marbled Polecat Explorer. And the player who gets this character card is going to get to use the pink die. And if you're not playing with the polecats in this game, the marbled polecats, it means you're the only player who's going to have access to the pink die, which is pretty cool on its own, obviously. Now, this ability is called Loot. You can use it once per turn, and obviously your action phase. With this, you'll spend 2 to roll the pink dice, draw the rolled number of cards from your deck, and place them into your hand. Then place as many cards from your hand on top of your deck in any order. So let's roll the pink dice. And we just rolled a 1, which means we spent 2 to roll a 1. So we got to draw 1 card, and then we discard 1 card. Or should I say not discard, but we get to put 1 card back on top of your deck. That could come in handy, but of course you're going to want to do this often, so that way you can get a better number, like getting to do 2 cards if you roll a 2. Roll a 1 again, but you'll definitely want to try to get the 3, obviously. So it's like a sort of like a gamble, if you will. But still, you can do this once per turn. It's a really cool ability. Okay, so the next one is even luckier than the last. This one is Witashka, the Snowshoe Hare Stargazer. And if you're playing with him, you are going to need this dice here. Okay? Now, his ability is called Cosmic Insight. You can use this once per turn, and obviously during your action phase. Now, you'll have to spend even more to do this ability, because you'll spend 3 to get to roll that dice, and then you'll search your discard pile for a card and place it into these locations depending on what you rolled. So we just rolled the dice, and we rolled the stars. And so since I rolled that, you would get to search your discard pile and place it at the bottom of your deck. And that's sort of what you would call a wah, wah, wah. Something you don't want to happen. And there's a couple of them on here, obviously. Well, let's roll the dice again and see what we get. Oh, it's that again. Let's roll it again. Oh, finally got something different. So if you roll this one, you'd get to search your discard pile and place it on top of your deck. That's a lot better, wouldn't you say, than placing it at the bottom of your deck? You get to search your discard pile for a card and place it on top of your deck instead. So that's better, obviously. But what you would like is to obviously get the one that has the meteor on it, because then you'd get to search your discard pile and place a card into your hand. So this is the one you want the most, probably, obviously. But what most likely will happen is you're going to get this, or you're going to get this. Okay, so that's why this one is definitely sort of a gamble lucky move for sure, because you still have to spend 3 to do this. So this is not something you'll necessarily want to do all the time. But still, it's a cool one nonetheless. Okay, so the next one here is Amiruki, the giant pangolin mender. Okay, and you'll have to use both of the light green and the dark green dice if you're doing this character card. You'll roll both dice, so let's do that. And then look at that. I actually rolled both of them once again. So if that happens, you'll have to re-roll the source die, the light green one here, until you have a different result on both dice. Okay, finally got something different. Then you'll place a card from any player's source into their destination. So you can do any player you want, including yourself. So since this was the source, you can place this one card from any player's deck, okay, into what their destination is, which is their discard pile. So, that's kind of definitely a mean thing to do, for sure, of course, but it's a strategic thing you could do as well. It's a really cool ability, and you could still use it to your advantage if it's something that will help you out. You know, maybe it allows you to place a card from your deck into your hand or something like that. Maybe you'll want to do it for your advantage. Who knows? But that's basically how this card will work if you decide to go with this one here. Okay, so we just have one more dice, and the last 2 cards will be easier to explain for sure. So this one is Aramiko, the Ocelot Gambler. Okay, with this one you're going to get this dice here, and you're also going to have access to gold too. So if nobody else is going to be using gold in this game, because you're not using the 2 Ataras, for instance, or something like that, or you're not using trap cards for that matter, there's a trap card that lets you use gold, for instance, then you're probably the only player who's going to get to use gold too. But this ability is bet. You get to use it once per turn during your action phase, and you can spend 3 to roll the red dice and then take the rolled number of coins, gold coins, from the bank. So let's roll the dice. and I rolled a 1. So that's actually not too bad because I just rolled a 1. So I spent 3 to get 1 gold coin from the bank. But there's worse. You can roll nothing at all. If you roll nothing at all, well, that's definitely a bad move, obviously. You just wasted 3 to roll nothing at all. So that could definitely happen too. But maybe you'll get lucky and you'll roll something like, ooh, this one here, and you get a 3. And even a 2 is pretty good too, for that matter. So anyways, it's definitely a gambling character card for sure. And it's still pretty fun to use and definitely use going for. I enjoyed playing with this one especially, so it was awesome. And it worked out most of the time. I didn't get a single blank one. Okay, so we still have 2 more left. So here we have Tidrin, or Tidrin, the Fennec Fox role model. This one has an ability called Encourage. Can use it once per turn and during your action phase. All players place the top card of their discard piles on top of their decks. So if you decide to do this, you're also going to get to place the top card of your discard pile on top of your deck. But so will everybody else. It could be, now of course, if it's just a bunch of junk cards on your opponent's discard piles, and you have a really good card on your discard pile, then it'll help you out a whole lot, and it won't help your opponents out so much. But, if you all have junk cards, you might want to rethink your strategy. Do you want to do it because you're also going to end up doing it to yourself? So it's definitely a dilemma for sure. But if you do decide to do this ability, you also have to discard as well. You also have to place the top card of your discard pile to the top of your deck as well as everyone else. So it's going to affect everybody, including yourself, okay? So maybe do it when it's more advantageous to you and less advantageous to your opponent. So if they have a really good card sitting on top of their discard pile, it may not be a good idea to do, okay? And so that's how that one is going to work. And then the last one here is Inga, the Atlantic Puffin Publisher. His ability is assess. It's going to cost, you can do it once per turn, and obviously during your action phase. Here you can spend 3 to draw 2 cards from your deck. You place 1 into your hand, and you discard the other card. Now, I can't say that's going to be helpful too often, but maybe one of them is a really good card that you draw, you get to keep, and you maybe have a bunch of junk cards in your hand anyways. That could be helpful. But you're spending 3 to do that, to this first, so I can't say that is going to be super beneficial unless you're also playing with gold coins or something as well. So it's definitely a dilemma for this card. This is probably my least favorite of them all because of that. It's not something you're going to want to do very often. But that's all of the character cards in the green color. That's all of them. So thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to leave a like if you guys liked this video. Okay? And I'll see you guys in the next video.